Welcome to Learn with Mr. Lewis. In Today in History this week, we're looking at the death of a sports legend, a space race milestone, a classic book that becomes a classic movie, and two famous fires. On December 24th, 1851, a fire destroyed two-thirds of the books at the Library of Congress, including two-thirds of the personal collection of Thomas Jefferson. In 1800, the Library of Congress was established by President John Adams. It was originally housed in the Capitol. It had about 3,000 books in the year 1814 when it was burned by the British during the War of 1812. In 1815, that following year, Thomas Jefferson sells his 6,500 books to the Library of Congress. It's still housed in the Capitol, and that's when this famous 1851 fire ravages these volumes. In 1897, the Library of Congress gets its own building across the street. It has an absolutely stunning interior. And there today, you can still see Jefferson's library with the 2,000 originals and replacements for most of those that are left. And they are marked with ribbons. On December 25th, Christmas Day, 1962, the movie To Kill a Mockingbird is released right at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, this is based on a 1960 book by Harper Lee, and it's a rare case where a book and a film are equally great. It's set in a small town in 1930s Alabama. Gregory Peck stars as Atticus Finch. Robert Duvall gets his first role in a major film as Boo Radley. But it's told from the perspective of a young girl nicknamed Scout and her adventures with her brother Jem and a neighbor named Dill. But the main storyline deals with Tom Robinson. He's a black man who is accused and is on trial for raping a white woman. The courtroom scenes are absolutely intense, and they are so brilliantly shot. And the film ends up winning 3 Oscars, including Best Actor for Gregory Peck. And in 2003, the American Film Institute named Atticus Finch, Peck's character, the greatest hero in movie history. On the morning of December 26, 1776, the Battle of Trenton occurs. It's one of the most important of the American Revolution. Washington's men were in very poor condition. Lack of food, lack of clothing, lack of equipment. Also, many of their enlistments were up at the end of the year. Across the river, you've got about 1,200 to 1,500 Hessians. These are German mercenaries in Trenton that are keeping an eye on him. They're led by Colonel Johann Rall. Washington's bold plan is to cross the river Christmas night with 2,000 men and attack that garrison at Trenton. The logistics of this are handled by Colonel John Glover. He commands a unit of former fishermen from Marblehead, Massachusetts, and these skills have come in handy already, twice saving Washington and New York. There's a statue of him, in fact, in Boston, near Boston Common. The crossing is very difficult, and it's followed by a 10-mile march in the snow, but they still managed to surprise the Hessians, even though they arrived 2 hours late, and none of Washington's men are killed. On December 27th, 1968, Apollo 8 splashes down after its 6-day mission. Now, 1968 was a mess. You have the USS Pueblo that's captured by North Korea. You have the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, LBJ's announcement that he's not running for another term, Martin Luther King's assassination, Robert F. Kennedy's assassination. It's a struggle. And it's at the end of this year that Frank Borman, William Anders, and Jim Lovell head out on Apollo 8. It's, to me, the biggest leap in the Apollo program. I mean, no manned mission had ever left Earth orbit, and this one orbits the moon 10 times. It takes up amazing close-up photos. You get the beautiful Earthrise picture taken by Bill Anders, which is maybe the greatest photo ever taken. You have the Christmas Eve message where they read the book of Genesis, and it's probably best summed up in a telegram sent to Borman. You saved 1968. On December 28th, 2021, NFL legend John Madden dies at age 85. His college career was plagued by injuries. He's drafted by the Eagles, but he never plays. After a few smaller coaching stints, he ends up as the head coach of the Raiders at just age 33. In 10 seasons, he posts one of the top winning percentages in NFL history, and he wins Super Bowl 11. It gets him into the Hall of Fame. But it's as a broadcaster that he really makes his name. For 22 years, he's teamed up with Pat Summerall. And then after that time, when Summerall retires, he joins Al Michaels. But for me, my biggest memory was way back in Super Bowl 18, Raiders and Redskins. Our family had just gotten our first VCR that Christmas, and we taped the game and watched it over and over and over again. Why? Because John Madden was that entertaining. And then, of course, his partnership with EA Sports with the Madden video game series, one of the most popular in history. On December 29th, 1845, Texas becomes a U.S. state. Texas's history is totally unique, and no Texan would ever let you forget that. In 1836, Texas wins its independence from Mexico. This includes the famous Battle of the Alamo. And so Texas, for the next 9 years, is an independent republic, with Sam Houston as its first president. John Tyler becomes president in 1841, and he really starts the push to annex Texas. But there's a big sticking point, which is the sticking point for everything at this time in U.S. history, and that is slavery. But when James Polk is elected in 1844, that push is renewed. And in fact, the day that Polk takes office in March of 1845, he sends a message to Texas asking them to join the Union. And Anson Jones, the president of Texas, holds a convention on July 4th. And this leads directly to Texas being welcomed into the Union on December 29th. On December 30th, 1903, the deadliest theater fire in U.S. history occurred when 602 people are killed at the Iroquois Theater in Chicago. Now, the theater just opened earlier that year, and it was luxurious. The building commissioner and fire inspector both declared that it was fireproof beyond all doubt, but an editorial in Fireproof magazine disagreed. Now, it was a full house with 2,000 patrons to see a matinee performance of Mr. Bluebeard, starring Eddie Foy. There's a spotlight backstage, and that's what starts the fire. Eddie Foy tells the patrons to stay put because they got an asbestos curtain, but the curtain doesn't come all the way down, and then panic ensues. Tragically, 27 of the 30 exits are locked, and there's no fire safety plan. When they open the back door, this creates a fireball that rips through the theater. There are bodies piled near the exits. There are charges and convictions, but only one person serves time. That's a saloon owner for robbery. Do you want to see some more of Mr. Lewis? Of course you do. You're addicted. There's a great video here, another great video here, and you can subscribe right here. Do you want to see some more of Mr. Lewis? Of course you do. You're addicted.